Roosevelt High School buzzed with the usual Friday chaos, students half engaged in their lessons, teachers trying to salvage attention spans worn thin by the week. In Lab Room 214, the hum of a projector fought against whispered conversations, and the occasional clatter of a dropped pen. Caleb Mercer leaned back in his seat, like the room owed him something. With his white Nike sneakers propped on the lower bar of his desk, and a Lacoste hoodie draped carelessly over his shoulders, he looked less like a student and more like someone killing time before his driver picked him up in the Range Rover. His reputation preceded him, son of Alan Mercer, the real estate mogul behind half of Chicago's skyline and the donor of the school's newly named Mercer Fitness Center. At the front, Mr. Yates pointed toward a diagram on the smartboard, voice flat but trying. Most of the class scribbled notes out of habit, if not interest. At the back of the room, near the sink, the school janitor quietly wiped down the counters, careful not to disturb anyone. He moved with a rhythm that suggested this wasn't just a job, it was a routine carved by years of repetition. Caleb looked up, smirked, and jabbed his pencil into the side of his friend Tanner's arm. Why is the janitor reading a textbook? Someone trying to graduate from mops to microscopes? A few chuckles broke the tension, shallow and uncertain. Tanner snorted, but didn't say anything. A girl in the next row looked away, pretending. She didn't hear. The air shifted. The janitor didn't respond. He simply turned the page of the textbook lying open beside the cleaning supplies and continued wiping, unbothered, like he'd heard it all before, and decided none of it was worth the price of his peace. But Caleb wasn't finished. He raised his voice just enough. What? Did he miss the memo that class is for students, not staff? Now more students laughed, louder this time. Not because the joke was clever, but because it was Caleb. The same guy who once called the EE, cafeteria food prison cuisine, loud enough for the lunch staff to hear. The same guy who filmed a substitute teacher struggling with the projector and uploaded it with a sarcastic caption. The class had learned it was easier to laugh than to be his next target. Mr. Yates hesitated, eyes flicking toward the back of the room. All right, let's stay focused, he muttered, weakly trying to redirect. Still no reaction from the janitor. He reached the end of the counter, closed the textbook with a quiet thud, and gathered his cloth. His name tag read Dorsey, though most students had never bothered to notice. He didn't say a word, didn't glare, didn't pause. He just wiped the last corner of the counter, picked up the worn book, and left the room through the side door, his back straight and pace unhurried. The door clicked shut behind him. For a moment, the laughter died down. A few students glanced at each other, unsure whether they'd just witnessed something small or something they'd regret later. Caleb grinned like he'd won something. Didn't know reading while cleaning was a thing, he whispered, just loud enough. Mr. Yates continued teaching, but the energy in the room had shifted. The lesson on cell structures now felt like background noise to the awkwardness that lingered. Caleb went back to pretending to take notes, though he clearly wasn't paying attention. No one knew that in less than a week, the same janitor they'd ignored or laughed at would become the reason this class remembered room 214 for the rest of their lives. And Caleb Mercer, so confident in his cleverness, had just taken the first step into a lesson no textbook could prepare him for. Caleb arrived at school Monday morning with the same usual swagger. Headphones in, sunglasses on, backpack slung over one shoulder like a fashion accessory. He walked through the front doors without looking at anyone, ignoring the security guard's half-hearted greeting. As always, the hallway seemed to part for him. He was used to being noticed, used to the stares, used to the whispers. When he reached his desk in third-period chemistry, Something was different. A sealed manila folder sat waiting for him. No name, no school logo, just placed precisely in the center like it had been delivered with intention. He looked around, expecting someone to be watching, waiting for a reaction, but the classroom buzzed with normal chatter. No one seemed to care. He opened it slowly, one eyebrow raised. Inside was a single printed sheet. Assignment: conduct an interview with Mr. Dorsey. Ask him 3 questions about his education, his life before this job, and something he regrets. Prepare a 5-minute presentation. No slides, no jokes, just truth. Deadline: Friday. At the bottom of the page was a handwritten note. If you're going to open your mouth, make it count. Let's see if you can learn something worth saying. There was no signature, but Caleb knew exactly where it came from. He snorted and folded the paper back into the folder, stuffing it deep into his bag without a second glance. He had better things to do. This wasn't even a real assignment. It couldn't be. Who gives homework based on an insult? Still, something about it stuck in his head. At lunch, he tossed the folder on the table next to his tray. "You won't believe what that janitor did," he said, chewing a mouthful of fries. Tanner looked up from his phone. "What? Did he complain?" "No. Worse. He gave me homework." The guys at the table laughed, thinking it was a joke. Caleb let them. But inside, he was already wondering what would happen if he just ignored it. The answer came soon enough. Tuesday, Mr. Yates paused halfway through class and addressed the room without looking at anyone in particular. "Reminder," he said, "those of you with individual assignments due Friday, I expect to see presentations. Skipping it means a 0 for the quarter." Caleb's stomach twisted, but he kept his face neutral. After class, he cornered Mr. Yates by the door. "This janitor thing, this isn't real, right?" Mr. Yates raised an eyebrow. "You humiliated someone doing their job. Seems like the least you can do is learn who he is. Think of it as character development." Caleb frowned. "But this isn't even about chemistry." "You're right," Mr. Yates replied calmly. "It's about being a decent human being." Caleb didn't argue further. He just walked away, jaw tight. That night, he stared at the folder again. It lay unopened on his desk like it was watching him. He picked it up, flipped it open, reread the instructions. Interview the janitor. 3 questions. 5-minute presentation. No jokes. The absurdity of it made him want to laugh, but he didn't. Not this time. The next morning, he showed up 10 minutes early and waited outside the custodial office. The door was propped open with a crate of paper towels. He knocked once, more out of habit than courtesy. Mr. Dorsey looked up from where he was sorting cleaning supplies. He said nothing at first, just held Caleb's gaze with calm eyes that saw more than they showed. Caleb hesitated. "Hey, I was told to, well, there's this thing, some assignment, interview. I don't know. It's stupid." Mr. Dorsey didn't blink. "And yet, here you are." Caleb shoved his hands in his pockets. "Can we just get it over with?" "No," Mr. Dorsey replied, turning back to his supplies. "What do you mean, no?" Caleb asked. "I mean, if all you want is to check a box, then this isn't worth either of our time. Come back when you're ready to actually listen." Caleb stood there, dumbfounded. No one said no to him, especially not staff. He walked away, humiliated, but also confused. By Thursday, the pressure was mounting. His friends were starting to ask questions. Mr. Yates reminded him again in class, and this time Caleb noticed a few students glance his way with curiosity, maybe even expectation. That afternoon, he returned to the janitor's closet, less cocky this time. Mr. Dorsey was mopping the hallway, his motions slow and steady. Caleb waited until he finished before speaking. "I'm ready to listen," he said. Mr. Dorsey leaned the mop against the wall and nodded once. "Tomorrow, library, 7 a.m. Be on time. 1 hour. My terms." Caleb almost argued, but stopped himself. "Fine." He turned to leave, but Mr. Dorsey's voice stopped him. "And Mercer, don't bring that smirk. Bring a notebook." For the first time in a long while, Caleb didn't have a comeback. The library felt colder than usual that morning. Maybe it was the early hour, maybe it was nerves, or maybe Caleb had never noticed how quiet the school could be when no one else was around. Rows of books stretched like silent witnesses as he stepped inside. Backpack slung properly for once, a notebook tucked under his arm, a pen clenched between his fingers. It was 6:59 a.m. Mr. Dorsey was already there, seated at a table near the back. No cleaning cart, no gloves, just a worn-out gray cardigan over a collared shirt, and a small black coffee steaming gently in front of him. He didn't stand when Caleb arrived. He simply gestured to the seat across from him. Caleb sat, awkward, but trying not to show it. "You're on time," Mr. Dorsey said, without looking up. "You said 7. "I did." The silence that followed wasn't hostile, it was intentional. Mr. Dorsey didn't rush to fill it, and for once, neither did Caleb. Instead, the teenager opened his notebook and waited. Mr. Dorsey took a sip of coffee. "Go ahead." Caleb cleared his throat. "All right, first question, where did you go to school?" Mr. Dorsey leaned back, folding his hands on the table. "Massachusetts Institute of Technology, class of '92. Caleb blinked. "Wait, you went to MIT?" "I did. That's like top 5 in the world." "I know." There was no pride in his voice. Just fact. Caleb hesitated. "So, what happened?" "That's not one of your questions." "Fair enough," Caleb murmured, scribbling a note. "Next, what did you do before working here?" "I designed mechanical systems for a company that builds factory robots. Smart machines, high stakes." "So, engineer, senior systems?" "Engineer." Caleb nodded slowly. "Then why are you here?" "That sounds like a fourth question," Mr. Dorsey said, a faint smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Caleb grinned, but it didn't last. He flipped to a clean page. "Third one. What's something you regret?" For the first time that morning, Mr. Dorsey's expression changed. His fingers tapped against the coffee cup. He glanced toward the window, then back at the table. There was a safety mechanism I helped design. It controlled pressure in an automated press used in car manufacturing. We knew there was a margin of error. I said it was too narrow. Management disagreed. We went forward anyway. It failed. The words hung there like cold air between them. Caleb swallowed. "Did someone get hurt?" Mr. Dorsey nodded. 3 people. 1 didn't make it. Caleb looked down. He didn't write anything. "I was never blamed officially," Mr. Dorsey continued, "but I knew I should have pushed harder, or walked away." Caleb met his eyes. "So, you left?" "I resigned. Didn't touch a blueprint after that. I moved back to Chicago, took whatever work I could find. Cleaning made sense. It's honest. The messes are visible." The room went quiet again. This time, Caleb let it sit. "You don't talk like someone who gave up," he said finally. "I didn't give up. I redirected. There's a difference. But don't you miss it? The challenge, the respect, the salary?" Mr. Dorsey smiled softly. Respect's overrated when it's built on titles, and challenge still exists. Try convincing a teenager to rethink how they see the world. That's harder than any algorithm. Caleb smirked, but there was something genuine behind it now. I guess you're not wrong. I rarely am, Mr. Dorsey said without a trace of arrogance. Caleb leaned forward. So, why did you give me this assignment? I didn't. Your teacher did, but I didn't stop him. Why not? Because you reminded me of someone I used to be. Smart. Loud. Convinced the world revolved around my cleverness. Took me years to figure out that knowing everything doesn't mean you understand anything. Caleb sat back, processing that. He tapped the pen against his notebook. You're not what I expected. Neither are you, Mr. Dorsey said. Which is good. Expectations are easy. Change is hard. The hour passed faster than either of them expected. By the time the library filled with distant footsteps and the rustle of backpacks, the conversation had shifted from questions to thoughts about cities, books, old machines, and things they'd both lost along the way. When Caleb stood to leave, he reached out and shook Mr. Dorsey's hand. It wasn't a show. No one was watching. It just felt like the right thing to do. As he walked out, he glanced back once. Mr. Dorsey was already cleaning up the table, putting away the empty coffee cup, straightening chairs someone else had left askew. Caleb opened his notebook before he even reached his next class. For once, the blank page didn't feel intimidating. It felt necessary, and what he wrote first wasn't a summary. It was a confession. Friday morning came faster than expected. The usual sound of locker doors and muffled earbuds filled the hallway, but room 214 was unusually full long before the bell rang. Word had spread. Not just about the assignment, but about Caleb Mercer, the Caleb Mercer, actually preparing something worth listening to. Even students who didn't have chemistry that period leaned against the back wall or peeked through the open door. No one wanted to miss it. Mr. Yates sat at his desk, arms folded, saying nothing. Just watching. Caleb stood at the front, not with his usual slouch or cocky grin. Today, he looked grounded, present. No slides, no laptop, just a notebook in one hand, and in the other, a folded piece of paper with ink still fresh from this morning. He cleared his throat once. No dramatic pause, no big introduction. I was asked to interview someone I didn't respect. Someone I dismissed because I thought I understood his worth by the uniform he wore. The room was quiet. Even the usual whisperers were still. His name is Mr. Dorsey. Most of you only know him as the janitor. I knew even less. I didn't care enough to ask. I just assumed. Caleb looked down at his notebook but didn't read from it. He went to MIT. He was a senior systems engineer. He once designed machines that could build cars faster than teams of people. Then one of those machines failed. People got hurt. Someone died. And even though he wasn't officially blamed, he couldn't keep doing it. He paused for a second, not for effect, but because the words felt heavier out loud than they had in his head. So he came here. Not because he ran out of options, but because he wanted to do something different. Something real. He told me that cleaning was honest work, that the messes here don't kill people. A few students exchanged glances, unsure if they should be impressed or ashamed. Caleb continued. I thought power was being above someone, having more, knowing more, laughing first. I thought making fun of someone was harmless if everyone else laughed too. But I see now, that's just fear. Fear of facing someone you can't outtalk. He unfolded the paper in his hand and held it loosely, not looking at it. I didn't just interview Mr. Dorsey. I listened. I sat across from someone who could have been making six figures in an office, but instead chose to show up here at 6 in the morning and wipe our tables. I thought he had failed. Turns out, he figured something out I hadn't even started to learn. Caleb looked up, his eyes steady. This week, I didn't get smarter. I got quieter. And in that quiet, I started hearing things I'd been too proud to notice, like the sound of responsibility, or regret, or wisdom. There was no applause. No one moved. It wasn't the kind of moment that begged for praise. It asked for reflection. Caleb closed his notebook slowly, then walked back to his seat. Mr. Yates didn't say anything. He simply nodded once and turned back to the whiteboard, like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But something had. Class resumed, but not quite normally. People looked at Caleb differently. Not with awe or admiration, something more cautious, like seeing a statue shift its position after years of standing still. Later that day, when the final bell rang and backpacks shuffled out the door, Caleb stayed behind. He packed his things deliberately, then headed toward the stairwell at the back of the building, where the staff lockers and supply rooms were tucked away. He found Mr. Dorsey outside, wiping down the banisters. The man didn't look up. "Heard? You delivered your speech." Caleb stepped closer. "I did." "Went well?" "I think so." "Not about thinking. It's about truth." Caleb reached into his bag and pulled out a page he'd torn from his notebook. He handed it over without a word. Mr. Dorsey took it, eyes scanning the handwriting slowly. Then he folded it once, carefully, and tucked it into his breast pocket. "I meant what I wrote," Caleb said quietly. "I get it now, or I'm starting to." Mr. Dorsey finally looked at him. "You sure?" "No," Caleb admitted. "But I want to keep trying." There was a pause, not awkward, just open. Mr. Dorsey nodded toward the storage closet. "You busy after school?" Caleb frowned. "Why?" "I could use a second pair of hands. You ever change a wax pad?" "Never even heard of it." "Then come on, I'll show you. Real education starts in the corners, where people usually don't look." Caleb smiled, small, honest, unpolished. "I'm in," as they walked down the hallway together, passing students who barely noticed. Caleb didn't care who was watching anymore. Some lessons aren't taught in classrooms. Some teachers don't need titles. And sometimes the people we ignore end up giving us the blueprint we didn't know we were missing.